We had a couple of months for the shakedown cruise, so plan was to head west. We get a couple of knots backwards and forwards along the English Channel, so best to time your departure accordingly. It's still chalk cliffs in this part of the country, more spectacular than the more famous ones at Dover, I think. We had to nip into Brighton for the night, as we had southerly wind and no shelter. Shame, as it's probably the worst marina on the south coast. It's quite a stretch to day sail to the Solent from Brighton in the usually prevailing westerlies. We were heading for Chichester, up the Itchenor River. We got there as the sun set. Now this is a nice place. It's great walks, great cycle tracks, we go there a lot. From here, you're in the Solent proper, which basically means it's crowded and very expensive. They even managed to charge you to anchor in the Bewley River. Best spot, I think, is opposite, on the Isle of Wight, a place called Newtown Creek. We didn't stop there this time, but we did stop for lunch and fish off the Needles. No luck though, I'm a terrible fisherman. The tides were wrong for us to go into Poole Harbour, so we anchored off Swanage for the night. Good shelter in anything but easterlies, but you end up a fair way out with a 2-metre draft. We're starting to get into real seaside holiday towns now. Weymouth has a marina accessed under lifting bridge that they raise every 2 hours on the even hour. We elected to rough it on the harbour wall, which I actually prefer. From Weymouth, the pilot books suggest you day sail straight across the bay, heading west. But if you did that, you'd miss the delights of Lyme Regis. You have to round Portland Bill, which can get lumpy. In good conditions it's great, and brilliant fishing, even I can catch them. Lyme Regis is the start of the Jurassic coast, so fossil hunting on the beach while eating fish and chips is the thing to do. The harbour here dries, but there's good holding in the bay and a couple of visitors' buoys if you like that kind of thing. From here, Torbay is an easy day sail, and you've now arrived in the English Riviera. I used to come here as a kid. There were no marinas then, but there's 2 now. We didn't use them. There's great shelter and space for anchoring here, so a night in Torquay to pick up our youngest daughter, then off to Brixham, a lovely old fishing town, if little touristy. Well, they call them grockles here, I'm not sure why. We did take the dinghy into the marina for petrol, but they didn't have any and wanted to charge us to leave our dinghy in the dinghy dock while we went to get some. You can probably guess my response to that. Normal British summer returned in Dartmouth, i.e. rain, but nothing can dampen the beauty of the River Dart, and you get to race the steam train. He won. There was a bit of swell left after the storm, so we decided to negotiate the bar on the river, going to Salcombe. Glad we did this, as it's a beautiful river, and very friendly harbour master led us to a mid-river pontoon rather than a buoy for the night. Next day we walked along the cliff. You get a great view down to the estuary. On the way out we sailed past the bay we had meant to anchor in, which was now nice and calm. Spent a day anchored off Plymouth. Cowsound Bay is a good sheltered spot and avoids tangling with the shipping in and out of Plymouth Harbour. On to Falmouth, a real sailor's harbour. Lots to explore, but we decided to push on and try to get to the Scilly Isles in settled weather. Couldn't resist a night in Helford River and the best pub in the West Country. Then on to have a look at this place, St Michael's Mount. There's enough shelter if there's some north in the breeze, and anchored by the castle you get front row for the fireworks display. All in all, this made the perfect jumping off point for our trip across to the Scillies. You hear horror stories of passages to and from the islands. It's exposed, and with the wrong wind and tide will really test your sea legs. We had a good northerly breeze for a quick crossing, but the sea state was good. Just the shipping lanes to worry about then. I always prefer crossing in the middle somewhere, but here you're crossing near the end and ships come at you from all directions. It really is worth the effort to get out to the Scillies. We love the place. White sand, stunning scenery. You think you've been transported somewhere else in the world. The thing about good weather in August here is that it's a bit of invasion by the French, so the usual spot in the southern islands get very crowded anchorages. So we set off to the northern islands. Uninhabited on land and not many boats, so we're on our own, really apart from the seals. The water is gin clear around the islands, but bloody cold, so walking is better than swimming. Last day was around Tresco, with its stunning tropical garden. We could have spent much longer in the Scillies, but we were meeting family in Jersey, so I had to go. Running behind schedule, we opted for an overnight 2-day passage. Wind on the back quarter made for a nice evening, but steady building wind and sea, with a severe gale warning at 3 AM, meant we made extremely fast progress, and I had to slow the boat down and wait for an hour in the calmer waters east of Guernsey, before entering Dorset Harbour through its solid granite entrance at dawn. Dorset is a very interesting, more rural option than the popular St Peter's Port further south. I'm glad we stopped there. We had a night at anchor off Sark, We would have liked to stay longer, but you'll be lucky to find a settled anchorage in choppy waters around the islands, and one night of falling out of bed was enough. With family down, we had a week in Jersey. It's a very interesting mix, having British islands just off the coast of France. There's lots to see and do. It was time to get back though, so a brief overnight in Dorset on mainland France was followed by an early start to cross the channel in a day. The Channel Islands have some of the biggest tides in the world, and of course tidal flow to go with it. The chart said we would have 6 knots with us up the coast. Our speed over ground suggested they might have underestimated that. Wind was with the tide, so we didn't mind going quite close to Cap de la Hague. Glad we had a big heavy boat though. All flattened out nicely once clear of the land, and we made record crossing for us, an average of 9 knots, not bad for a 26-ton boat. Always easier travelling east through the channel, so we had a leisurely trip back to Eastbourne. All in all, a successful shakedown cruise and a few lessons learnt.